Welcome to the Betrayal Trauma Recovery Bookshelf, a space for women healing from betrayal to reconnect with their mind, body, and soul, one page at a time. I'm Rachel Strong-Smith, a betrayal trauma coach who's walked this path myself. In each episode, we'll explore books that speak to the heart of recovery, books that validate your experience, offer insight, and remind you that you're not alone. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about coming home to yourself. So, whether you're in the thick of survival or finding your way back to solid ground, pull up a chair. You're in the right place. Welcome back to the Betrayal Trauma Recovery Bookshelf. Today, we are continuing on with Dr. Kevin Skinner's book, Treating Trauma from Sexual Betrayal. And I just am so excited to talk about safety. In chapter 6, Dr. Skinner quotes Marcus Annaeus Seneca, which says, "To keep oneself safe does not mean to bury oneself." I really like that quote. So to begin with, we're talking about what is safety. What does it look like? I love in the book that Dr. Skinner really looks at that safety is an innate human seeking behavior. So we actually have in our nervous systems safety seeking behaviors. Our nervous system gathers all these clues all around us to find out whether a person is safe, dangerous, or life-threatening. He gives an example of walking into a room. I think we can all relate to this. Walking into a room, we scan, maybe we don't see anybody that we know, and we kind of feel a little nervous, and we're like, okay, what is this? Is this okay? And as you're determining whether to take a risk or not, a lot of times we'll kind of, okay, I think it's worth it to take a risk and kind of stay and check it out instead of just immediately running away. We kind of check it out and see. And then we're constantly looking for those clues. Is it safe or not? Because we want connection. We are communal beings. As humans, we want connection. We are seeking for connection, but connection cannot happen if there is no safety. And so we are looking for safety so that we can have connection. How does this relate to betrayal trauma? When our safety is completely shattered, we are constantly seeking for it because we want that connection. But when it's shattered, we don't have the connection either. And then with everything that comes around betrayal, with that gaslighting, the blame shifting, the minimization and justification, that mechanism that says, okay, let's kind of take this risk in order to do connection, gets kind of warped. Because we're looking at it, we're like, okay, maybe it's fine. He's saying everything's fine, but your body is still on high alert because it really isn't safe. Something that a client shared with me, and I loved this story just to illustrate this, is there was an experiment done with 2 decks of cards. They were saying, okay, we're doing this experiment, and it was kind of a game where you would take the cards and it was going to give you points or not give you points or something like that. The participants start doing that, and what they don't know is that one of the decks is rigged. One was red, one was blue. The red deck was rigged. And so they started playing, and then it was maybe 100 draws. They started going, whoa, this seems rigged. Something's going on. And then they started picking from the blue one exclusively, and they were able to even verbalize that. Then what they did was they had them hooked up to electrodes and testing various whatevers. And they noticed that their body actually sensed it like 10 cards in, that the body started to give signals of distress. But the brain, the cognition, didn't catch up still for 100 more. because the body is actually really, really sensitive to it. And it takes a while for the brain to interpret those signals. Then if you add on, this is me putting a spin on it because I thought, oh, I love that experiment. It really shows it. Now, if you added, and I'm not proposing that you ever experiment this because this is an unethical experiment with people. If you added somebody there who said, oh no, that's in your imagination. For sure the red deck isn't rigged. No, we haven't done anything to it. Think about what happens in that system and what the body and the brain would be trying to do to make sense of this. That is an extra component in the betrayal trauma, is that you are being gaslit, your partner saying, no, that's not happening, or hiding, or hey, what's wrong? Nothing, don't worry about it. That actually adds more to that disconnection from your body and your mind and trying to interpret. So you start not being able to trust your own self, and not being able to trust yourself is not safe. It doesn't feel safe, and we know that inherently. So Dr. Skinner continues on to talk about, well, how does bonding actually happen? In a relationship, as we develop the relationship, we actually start to feel safe enough to let your guard down. And you start sharing parts of yourselves, you feel accepted, you feel validated. And so then we get into a relationship and we're feeling safe enough. Those mechanisms are working. It's okay, safe, connection. And then when betrayal and hiding comes into the mix, Dr. Skinner tells a story about a couple who this happens to. It starts out, okay, yes, trusting relationship. Now, there were probably things still going on, but it was enough of safety, enough, to go into a relationship. And we can't know everything. We're just trying to find that connection, and it's not on us to be mind readers. I want to be clear about that. Just because we have this innate sense in our bodies to seek safety, we aren't like magic. We're not going into everything being like, oh, I know exactly what's happening. No, it is a very organic process. And somebody who is hiding things, it's going to be hidden. I actually want to tell a little bit about my story because this story actually parallels it almost exactly. And I was like, well, I think I'll just share my story. So I'm dating my husband, and he was just my boyfriend at the time. Dating him, everything was going pretty good. I felt like we could talk. I was getting to know him. I was sharing. He was showing up. And I had asked him, just out of curiosity, have you ever looked at pornography? He said, oh, well, when I was younger, yeah, I was exposed to it, but no, not a real problem. Unbeknownst to me, it was happening. He was looking at pornography and engaging in that behavior while we were dating, but it was, I think, so compartmentalized, and we weren't living together. And so it was when he was with me, right? He was just with me, and I didn't see any kind of like secret things. I can look back now and see there were some flags, but there were things I didn't know. I didn't know that certain things were flags. I kind of came into it with, we're just people, let's keep trying, which I think is a great perspective that I had. And it did get taken advantage of because he was in an addiction place, and that was what was happening. So I feel great. I love him. He loves me. We talk about things. We have a lot in common. I'm feeling safe. I'm able to share myself completely. And I assumed he was sharing himself completely, and that we would just continue that process of getting to know each other, being vulnerable and opening up. So we decided to get married. We get married, and within 2 to 3 months, I noticed a huge shift, and I was so confused. I was like, what is happening? And so I start watching. I have in my journal that I just was so confused and worried and what was happening. And I guess this is marriage. It's just really hard. It was pretty 180 for me. It was, where did the guy that I was dating go. And so he was being more distant. He was not showing up in emotional. I mean, I would say he was probably only medium emotionally showing up when we were dating, but it was enough. And so I just figured that would grow. And it just fell off a cliff. There was now almost none. And I would share some emotions or what was going on or what I thought, and then he would be shutting me down or blame shifting. And I really thought, okay, yeah, it's true. I'm not totally got this figured out either. Okay. And so it was quite subtle, but I did sense something. Then another 3 months go by. It pops into my head. I ask him, have you ever looked at pornography since we've been married? And he says no. And then later on says yes. And that begins a 20-year cycle of him hiding his addiction and me trying to find it and asking questions. And always in my body, I knew, and I felt so anxious, but I also thought, oh, I'm overreacting. What's wrong with me? Just, get over it. It was quite disconcerting, actually. And my body really didn't feel safe. In this story, it just is the same thing. This husband begins acting a little strange. And I love this line. Her intuition was right that something had changed. Dr. Porges describes how this process works. Most people are able to gauge danger and love by means of their gut feelings, which generally accurately detect the relative danger or safety of their situation. Dr. Skinner goes on to say, it has been my experience that most individuals deal with sexual betrayal are able to detect something is wrong, but they can't put their finger on the problem. Once they have full disclosure, they realize that their instincts were correct. And that was 100% my experience. After full disclosure, and I filled in the timeline, I was right. There were times where I couldn't find any proof. But in my gut, I just knew something was wrong, something was off. And knowing that he had been acting out and had hidden it before added to that hypervigilance. And I thought it was my responsibility to find out about the behavior, not his responsibility to be honest and transparent. So that kept me in that cycle. Here's the real thing too. Based on these discoveries, the natural movement is to go to safety mode and into protection mode and move further back. And I shamed myself for wanting to move back, for going into safety mode, because I did believe the lies that somehow I was the one who was wrong for not feeling comfortable in this really unsafe situation. I want to stress that the body knows, and if you don't listen to it initially, that's okay. That makes sense too. Sometimes there can be shame around, well, why didn't I listen to my body? Why didn't I speak up sooner? Why didn't I take the space that I actually needed? And it is very complicated. The truth is, this is what happened. This is how it went. And as you reestablish that connection to your intuition, to your gut feelings, then you will be able to continue to move forward and strengthen that. It isn't broken, that mechanism, even after years of gaslighting and denying my own reality. It never broke. It got buried, but it never broke. It was still there. And I needed to do the work to get back to it, but it wasn't broke. And something that I tell my clients a lot, the same mechanism that helps you to determine if you are not safe. So that one that sometimes feels like, oh, why can't I just trust? But it's telling you, no, this doesn't feel safe. It's not safe. It's based on past experiences. It's based on current energy that you're able to sense. That same mechanism is the very same mechanism that helps you determine if you feel safe. So we don't want to turn off the one that says, I don't feel safe, because that's the exact same one that says, oh, I do feel safe. So when we connect to that gut instinct, that gut intuition, we are then able to discern much more accurately what is going on, and we need to trust that. Something that helped me is that I just started trusting my body at all times, even through all the triggers and stuff, because I was like, there is a reason that I am feeling triggered. And so I'm going to honor and trust that and rebuild the trust with myself that I will listen to myself now. And it takes a lot of time and practice, and I continually practice that. I continually reprogram, because those voices became really, really loud that, oh, but what if, no, you might be wrong. Well, they're probably just like all of those voices, because I want connection. And I'm searching for safety to get the connection. But I can't skip the part that if it doesn't feel safe, I'm not going to be able to connect with that person. Dr. Skinner really hits home. Healing really begins with safety. Now, I take a little bit different approach. So I do believe that safety, in order for the relationship to heal, it has to be there. And Dr. Skinner focuses on that relational part. I would say majority. He focuses on the relationship, getting that relational safety. He does talk about the individual healing. I'm going to focus on the individual healing and the individual safety, because here's a misconception that I think happens. Oh, healing can't happen without safety. So here I am, the betrayed partner who is looking for safety from my partner who has betrayed me. And I'm watching for that safety. And let's say it's not coming. Where does that leave me? And then I think, well, I need safety in order to heal. And that is true. But what if the safety comes from yourself, your support group? The safety for the relationship, you are safe as you watch for when that safety is happening with these boundaries and emotional and physical boundaries. So what does safety in self look like? There is a lot of things about what safety looks like in relationship, and I'm going to go through what he talks about for what safety is. And his, again, goes a little bit heavy on the relationship side, and I'm going to go heavy on the individual side. So here's the first principle for safety: no secrets. Okay. So in that relationship, that seems pretty obvious, right? Like between both of you, there are no secrets. Now, you can't actually make somebody tell the truth and have transparency. You can talk about it and request it. I'm going to share, for me, one of the big moments that happened was that I had caught my husband in a pretty big lie, deception, and caught him in the act. And I just told him, I said, you have to tell me the truth. You have to be honest here. You have to just tell me what's happening. That is more important than anything else, even if you're doing these behaviors. So he promised up and down, he was not going to tell any more lies. He was not going to keep it a secret. He assured me so much to the point that I was like, my nervous system calmed down. I was like, okay, this is it. He is going to be truthful, honest. I can depend on that. And I put all of my safety and trust into him and said, okay, I think that'll work. I can do that and trust. Now, why did my nervous system calm down? Because he himself actually believed it. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I believe that. That feels like that is true. He is. And I believe he wanted to tell me the truth. He wanted, but he never got support. He never got a place to heal his wounds. I wasn't getting support. And so all that happened was he white knuckled for about 2 years. We were in this place and I was like, hey, he's going to tell me the truth. He's going to tell me the truth. I can rely on that. And that gave me a sense of safety, which was great, right? I'm feeling that safety. But unfortunately, it was a false safety because after a couple of years, he lied straight to my face. That was a really, really big lie. And I had been able to even kind of count on that if I asked him about it, he would tell me. But this one, I asked him about it and I sensed it. And I said, you got to tell me. And he said, no, I don't know. Nothing's going on. I remember I said, then I must be crazy because everything is screaming that something's going on. That was the worst gaslight. I felt just insane. I couldn't let that go. And eventually I just said, look, I don't believe you. I don't feel good. I don't know what to do with this, but please tell me. And, luckily he did eventually, but the damage is done. That was a breaking point for me. It was my rock bottom where I went, I can't do this. I can't be on his roller coaster. It's not actually safe for him to tell me, I'm going to tell you the truth. I rely on it and then he doesn't. How do I then find safety if I need him to tell the truth for the relationship? That is the key. I thought I needed him to tell me the truth so I individually can heal and be safe. But I just need him to be able to be honest and open for the relationship to heal. So once I made that connection, I was like, okay, I will find my safety. The fact that he has been lying isn't safe. So what do I need to do for me? And I took distance. I took space. I put up my boundaries because it wasn't safe to be around a person who is not able to be honest and truthful. And addiction is the thing. Addiction, it hides. In fact, that's what in the book it says, simply put, addiction grows in silence. But that was for him to figure out. If he couldn't be honest and safe, that meant I could not be in relationship and connection with him, and that hurt. I was so sad about that. And that process to come to that point was maybe 6 months before I could even really say, oh, this isn't safe. I'm telling you the fast version. This is over months and years of coming to terms with that. So, no secrets. What does that look like in me individually? It means I don't keep secrets from me. I'm honest with me. I'm open with me and with safe people. Because that was another thing, is that I was actually really open and vulnerable, but he wasn't. So it looked like intimacy because I was willing to open up and share everything, but he wasn't. That wasn't on me to make this connection and intimacy work. I can't work more for him. I can't make him be honest and open, even though I really, really wanted him to, so that I could connect with him. So no secrets means I am facing my reality. I'm being honest with me. I'm finding safe people that I can share with, and I'm not sharing with not safe people. That for me was a really big determination. Okay, principle number 2, take responsibility for your own actions. Again, relationally, yeah, that has to happen for healing. How does that look for individual healing? Because what if your spouse, your partner is not taking responsibility for their action? Can't make them, and the relationship cannot heal. There is not safety. What does it look like to find safety and responsibility for your own actions? Now, this term responsibility can kind of seem like, oh, I have to carry it all. But really, it's about empowerment of how do you want to show up? How do you want to live? And I like Dr. Skinner's example that the wife took responsibility for her choice regarding the marriage when she said, I won't be in a relationship where pornography is present. Now, that can't be an ultimatum or a threat. That simply is. And that is where Bill of Rights work and value work, to really understand what are your values. I remember my coach telling me, she showed me her Bill of Rights. This was very early on, and I was so overwhelmed. Bill of what? And one of them was, I will not live with someone in active addiction. And I was like, how can that even be a Bill of Rights? Like, how can you have the right to do that? Because I had lived with someone in active addiction for 20 years. And I did not believe I had the right to not live with someone in active addiction. I also believed I didn't have the right to full fidelity because I hadn't had full fidelity in my marriage ever. And so how can I say I have the right to do that without controlling him? And what I realized was when I empower myself to say, I won't do that, I won't be in that, and I will grieve that I don't have that close connection, intimacy with you that I desperately want, but I won't do it at the expense of myself. I won't do it at the expense of violating my right to not be living with that. And again, it's so nuanced, because when I first heard that, I thought, okay, that means he has to stop being in addiction, and then our problems are solved. The issue with that is if I'm hustling to get him to stop being in addiction so that I have the right to be with someone who's not in addiction, I'm putting all of my energy, all of my effort into him instead of going towards me saying, I won't be with someone who is in addiction. And what that means is these boundaries. It means this is what it looks like. It means I accept that. Now, I accept the reality of the situation. Now, again, I always have to put these asterisks and nuanced statements because that does not happen overnight. That is not just a flip your mindset and you've got it. There are so many mechanisms, protection mechanisms for why we don't think we have the right to full fidelity. And that is where we can take that empowerment to go find safe support for you, where you can explore that in a safe setting that honors where you're at, honors what you have felt, honors what you've experienced, honors reality as you are ready to see it and explore it. The third principle is find an accountability team. So that leads right into it. That is your support. That is coaching, group, therapist, trusted friend, really finding the support that you need to find the safety. Again, how does that look in relationship? Each person is doing their individual healing and having their own group and support. I tried to be my husband's sponsor for so long. That was the whole tell me the truth thing. I'll support you. I'll hear you. I'll be your accountability partner. For me, it did not work at all. All it did was re-traumatize me. So finally, when I set the boundary that I will not be your accountability person, you find your accountability. All I know is that I won't be in a relationship with someone in active addiction and with someone doing these behaviors, the blaming, the minimizing, the criticism, the lack of safety, the lack of trust. I won't be in that. I won't be close in that because I cannot be. It isn't safe. I cannot connect. And I am looking for my own support and have my own healing space. This is what Dr. Skinner says, and I think I'll leave it at that. When the three principles above are not upheld in relationships, trust cannot develop and safety in the relationship is further impaired. In such a situation, I strongly suggest the betrayed spouse seek safety in other meaningful and healthy relationships. In some situations, safety in the relationship is not an option due to the depth of deception and multitude of lies that have occurred over the years. Therefore, finding outside support is critical because your spouse cannot provide the support you need to heal. I would say, regardless of whether he is doing his active recovery work or not, this is where I would differentiate. You finding outside support is critical, period. Not because your husband cannot support you so that you need to heal. That is the relational healing. If your spouse cannot show up in that trust and safety for the relational healing, that relationship is on pause or terminated if that's the time for that. But you can heal no matter what the circumstance is, no matter what your spouse chooses. you can heal. You can find that support. You can find that empowerment to go in and feel and find that connection, reconnection with yourself. Once I could see that the relationship and my individual healing were two separate things, that was a game changer for me, because I could separate his actions where they were impacting me directly, but I could step away from that. And that meant the relationship was on pause. It wasn't connecting. It wasn't healing because it couldn't. It was always a disconnected relationship. Once I could see that, then I could separate and say, I'm going to do my healing. When my husband saw that I started setting some boundaries and he started freaking out, he said, fine, let's go to couples therapy. And I said, oh no, I won't be doing that. I'll watch, like once we do individual work, I'll see if it's time, but I won't be doing. We had done couples therapy, 4 years into the marriage, and it did more damage because this is not a couples issue. This is his addiction that has deeply impacted me. He had not, up until that point, ever really gotten any help or support for it. And that was for him to work on so that he could show up in a place to have a relationship. But at that point, he wasn't ready even to have that relationship with me. And I had to come to terms with that and accept that. And so I moved myself into the proximity and frequency at which I was safe. And the relationship was on pause. And I began to heal and see clearly. That is the power of safety and finding safety in yourself foundationally. Once you feel that safety in yourself, it resonates when someone else is showing up in safety, which is another thing. I didn't even know what safety really was to even be watching for it. Once I started establishing safety in myself, and that came from having safety in my coach, support groups, therapy, 12 steps, I could finally see what safety felt like, and I grew my own safety inside myself. Okay, this was such a great discussion. Thank you for being here with me and looking at this concept of safety. I will see you next time. Thanks for joining me today on the Betrayal Trauma Recovery Bookshelf. If something from this episode spoke to you, share it with a friend or come connect with me online. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Rachel Strong Smith. And if you want to go deeper, sign up for my email newsletter, where I share grounded support, personal insights, and practical tools to help you reconnect with yourself. Remember, healing isn't a straight line. It's a spiral, and every step towards yourself matters. So until next time, take gentle care.